Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discussed the Detroit Lions' 23-20 victory over the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. We'll talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and where things stand for the Lions following win number 11 and their 10th straight. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, this is the Detroit Lions 2024 NFL Fan of the Year, Megan Stefanski, and you are listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast that drops on Mondays. James, good to have you here.
Good to be here. It's a winning, not a victory Monday, but a victory Friday, which is weird, but still, it's a victory day, so we got to count it.
It is, and that is very true, and we're hoping history repeats itself about 7 days from now as well. Joining us is Coach Jerry Angers, a former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here on this day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday edition.
I'm not quite sure why my turkey just keeps tasting better and better, but man, it was the best turkey I ever had yesterday in 7 years.
Yeah, I think that sounds probably about accurate for a lot of Lions fans out there, and the pumpkin pie probably did as well.
Oh, yes, sir.
All right, guys, let's hear from Coach Campbell as we get things started.
Ultimately, man, that's a good win against an opponent that is fought every week, and this was the third game in a row, division game that those guys have brought it over there, and so we did what we had to do to win, and we'll clean up the other stuff that cost us some points. I'm not worried about that, but I will take this W, and I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Okay, guys, give me your overall reaction in a sentence or two. Coach, we had a win. What's your reaction?
Situational coaching produces wins. Your team is prepared for everything, which is the Lions staff. 16 injuries on defense, and we still outcome and take over adversity and win. And they coach by situations, and you'll never see anything come down to the end of the game with the Detroit Lions like yesterday.
All right, James, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I don't know if we can get the rights to it, but we should use the MASH song as the intro for this week's episode, because I mean, man, the front seven of the defense is almost nothing like what it was in the preseason.
Yeah.
But they still won.
Yep. And I'm going to chalk it up to the two words I texted you guys right after the game. Coaching matters. Mm-hmm. And the end of this thing was a mess. And they had a timeout to use to help with their mess. Like, unlike the Lions, when they were trying to do that field goal against Tampa before halftime, there were no timeouts. And it was just, But you could have called the timeout with 19 seconds or whatever it was. They didn't do it. I'm okay with that. Lions victory. So, okay, coaching matters. Well, let's start talking about what we liked in this one. Coach, what's something that you liked?
17 pressures without blitzes. They got, I'm getting different readings, but they had Smith down for 8, Reeder down for 7, Muhammad 7. That dude had a game, and that's just this to show what this Lions team's all about. Guys are dropping like flies. As James said, we're in the MASH unit, and you still get guys that continue to step up and make plays. DJ Reeder just tied his career high sacks. Career high. And we're still only how many games into the season? And that comes from Williams. Our D-line coach has taken what he has. And there's that old saying about chicken and soup and stuff like that. Well, they're making it into a soup right now. And I just love what they're doing as a unit.
Yeah, that is incredible. The DJ Reeder thing just seems like it has been the perfect offseason free agent move for the Lions. And so that is exciting to see him do well. Muhammad playing the game that he did. I mean, and getting those pressures without blitzes really helps with the secondary because then you're not pulling someone from coverage to generate that pass rush. Um, so yeah, and keeping them fresh was the first half rushing stats. The Detroit Lions offense, they ran for 144 yards in the first half. When I was at that at halftime, I was like, oh man, I said they'd get about 175, maybe 200 yards ago. So they're going to get 200 easy. And I mean, that didn't happen, and we'll get into that. But those rushing stats were great because it also kept the Lions on the field for a long period of time. And James, that leads right into what you were talking about here.
Yeah, the time of possession in the first half was crazy. 22, almost 23 minutes of possession in the first half. I mean, Detroit ran the most plays in the first half of a game in the NFL this season with 47. Ironically, the team that they tied in that is Chicago from earlier in this season. Uh, but 18 first downs to 2 for Chicago. I mean, that's crazy. They had almost as many first downs as Chicago ran plays in the entire first half. I mean, and the run game was very effective. Just, the Sonic and Knuckles, we saw the video or the pictures before the game of them coming in with Sonic and Knuckles mascots and custom made coats and everything with that on it is pretty awesome. But yeah, just a dominant run game in the first half for the Detroit Lions for sure.
Yeah, and it helped with that time of possession big time, keeping the Detroit Lions defense fresh. You said it, the Bears had 2 first downs, but they didn't have any first downs until like the final minute or two of the first half. And so it was on that final attempted whatever it was, drive or whatnot. And so it was a dominant first half in every stat you can look at, except for the scoreboard. That could have been more dominant, and we'll get to that. But
Yeah,
the go ahead, James.
yeah, and kind of reminiscent of the Buccaneers game with getting into the red zone and not scoring. Otherwise, that game could have been 35 to nothing halftime without the settling for 3 field goals and the Gibbs fumble.
Yeah, and it probably should have been at that point, but I still liked the play calling in general in the first half. I mean, I like the fact that they were trying to get Penei Sewell to throw the ball, just the creativity of that. And we had heard rumblings that Penei has a nice spiral. So I wasn't completely shocked when they ran it for a couple of reasons. One, I'm just not shocked at anything they do anymore. Um, but at the same time, then once he wasn't going to throw it, coach, I wouldn't have wanted to be one of the people who's going to try and tackle that guy. How about you?
Well, I tell you, the first thing is I'm going to go back to coaching. If it's not there, run it or dirt it. The guy looked like a quarterback out there. The throw wasn't there. So then the next thing is he decides to run, and now you got guys bouncing off. He has one of the best stiff arms I've ever seen. I think Henry esque, but I think he may be on angry runs this week for Good Morning Football. But just and again, love seeing him do that stuff. And that play's gonna happen, guys. That play's gonna happen somewhere down the road. And now you got to coach it. You got to coach it again. You gotta spend time when Sewell is not lined up at right tackle and he's lined up as the left slot. Are they tossing to the field or is he going to run a double reverse pass? Love it.
For sure. And back to the defensive side of it, because the defense did such a great job in that first half. Chicago was 0 for 5 on third downs, 0 for 2 on fourth downs in that half. I mean, they averaged 2.8 yards a play in the first half. It was a extremely dominating performance by our defense in the first half. All those 3 and outs combined with the way the offense was going, it was going really well in a lot of different areas. James, what did you want to add on the defense there?
Yeah, the pressure was, like Jerry said, pretty darn good in the first half, especially without using a whole lot of bringing linebackers or anybody like that to help the front four. Then when Levi and Pascal got hurt, that kind of took a little bit of a dip, and then Wingo left for a few plays too. But I mean, after that, in the second half, they were able to get some more pressure late in the game when they needed it in obvious passing downs. But that first half defense was just on fire. I mean, what it was three and outs to lead the game for the Bears.
Yeah, coach, what did you want to add to that?
Well, going back to the pressure thing, we talked about in the pregame that, Well, I don't remember what his throwing percentages were, like off the top of my head, 38% when he's pressured. You watch any of those balls that he completed throughout that game, the ones that were completed, there was nobody in his face. There was no pressure. When he sat in the pocket clean or broke out and threw, that one play we talked about that. I threw that out there last week where he's always got his eyes down the field. And that one he rolled out, eyes down the field, and just a little dump off to the back for extra yardage. So and it was good that we figured it out. I don't know if you guys noticed, we went to that nickel package more. And that was the big thing where they started developing that pressure. And then, of course, Muhammad and them stepped up big. And Smith was all over the place. And, of course, McNeil was pushing the pocket and Reeder. And those guys played way above their snap count, that's for sure.
Yeah, they did, and that was quite impactful and needed. And we're gonna get into that because it's going to be continue to be needed, isn't it, Coach?
Oh, God, yes, it is.
All right. Well, anything else you liked that you guys want to mention before we get into turning points and some pivotal moments that took place in this game? All right. Well, then let's get into that. I'm going to say a pivotal moment was the Bears' red zone defense. And we knew that coming in that the Bears had a pretty good red zone defense. And they didn't disappoint their fans in that. The Lions were 2 for 5 in the red zone. And so, we kind of talked about that 16-0 lead. James said it could have been 35-0, should have been at least 23-0. And so, James, how are you feeling? How were you feeling at halftime, or throughout the game with the Lions not being able to quite get it in the red zone there?
I felt pretty decent because I was like, well, if this continues in the second half, there's no way they blow this lead. I mean, they're just going to keep adding points, right?
Right.
So I felt
Something like
pretty
that.
good, but Chicago obviously made some adjustments, and so and eventually made adjustments on offense as well, and started to make it a closer game as things went on.
Coach, how about you? That red zone defense for the Bears did well. The Lions, they got points, but
Yeah.
they didn't maximize, and we know what
And I,
that's
was-
like
and I
when
was nervous, if my coach's standpoint comes out on that, 16-0 is a two-score game. And we talked about it in the pregame too. You can't let a team like this hang around. All of a sudden they complete a couple passes, maybe they get a turnover, maybe we fumble the ball, maybe we get a 15-yard penalty, things like that, and the whole game turns on that. And so, the biggest thing I loved how the Lions attacked and beat that red zone defense. The pass to Laporta, guys, that was a one
oh
receiver route. That was a one receiver route with J-Mo blocking backside. And they did that last year. We brought it up in a game. And for Laporta to do that, they fake the toss. Everybody comes down on the toss. Laporta runs a little skinny slant or post, and it's a touchdown. So, I think he went through his playbook. And they even said that the playbook was going to be smaller because of the only 4 days to get ready for it. So, but yeah, the red zone, we definitely gotta clean that up, especially against teams like this hanging around, but with the teams we got coming up, we got to get sevens. We can't go threes.
well, yeah, and don't think about it. Both touchdowns were passes to Laporta.
Mm-hmm.
James, we rushed for 144 yards in the first half, and we didn't have a rushing touchdown, which is really surprising if that's what we're doing. And I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, those Laporta plays were brilliant, as Coach pointed out. But again, a little surprising. And again, if it wasn't for that Jameer Gibbs fumble right before halftime, we may have seen a rushing touchdown, and that was another big pivotal moment there, James. Would you want to weigh in on that and or the rushing aspect?
Well, I mean, the Lions game was just as effective as it always is, especially in the first half. I mean, Montgomery ended up with 88 yards, Gibbs 87 on only 9 carries. So, I mean,
Right.
he averaged almost 10 yards a carry. That is crazy against what's a pretty solid defense for the Bears. Surprisingly, this season that their defense has kind of been what's carried them more so than the offense that everybody came into the season thinking was going to be gangbusters. Um, so I mean that was just pretty darn good. And David Montgomery, 21 carries, 4.2 a carry, just pounding the ball inside on them, setting up all those play action passes.
Yeah, David Montgomery, 4.29, 4.2 yards a carry. Jameer Gibbs had 9.7 yards per carry. Like you said, only touched the ball 9 times. Like you're just sitting here thinking, why didn't he get the ball more? I guess it's because I think there was a play in the second half or a series where we threw it on three straight possessions again. And it's like, all right, why are we going away from the run at that point? We saw the Lions do that a bit last year at times when we ran the ball a lot in the first half and didn't quite do it as much. And maybe it was trying to make adjustments because the defense is adjusting against you. Uh, but yeah, again, the running stats at halftime compared to where they ended, and I'm going to get into that later. Um, but I guess another thing that go ahead, James, you had something you wanted to add.
No, I started thinking about the Lions third quarter, not passing or not running the ball as much after having a successful first half in the thing. And I started thinking that strategically that could be a thing with Ben Johnson figuring we're going to pound them. We're going to pound them on the fringes too and make these DBs who aren't used to making tackles have to tackle David Montgomery and take hits all for the first half and then the second half go after these banged up DBs.
Yeah,
I'm like that. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Because I mean, they were just pounding the ball, and it's a bit of a revenge game for David Montgomery too, because this is the team that let him go in free agency.
yeah. I feel like every time he plays them, it's going to be that feeling, that fire that's inside of him. This next thing we have as a pivotal moment is probably something that we both, or we all three of us, put under the did not like part, and that's the Jamison Williams penalty, where he's on the sideline, he throws the ball right at the dude's face and hits him. 15-yard penalty, and that kind of helped the Bears kind of stay in this one, Coach.
Well, the fumble, we talked about that too. The fumble's the fumble. That's part of it. Gibbs will hold the ball next time. That's a correctable situation, which I also hopefully Jamos is. But my first thing is inexcusable. You guys, my text messages were flying at you on that point because inexcusable, selfish, not team ball for the Lions. Almost cost us a game. I literally almost cost us the game. Changed the path of the game, and I am one of those karma guys. Change the path of the game. As soon as that happens, what happens next? Now we're on defense because we have to punt the ball and we lose a guy. Okay. Well, if we go down and score, we don't have that defensive rep to worry about. But because anytime those things happen, that's how I coach. I always work that. Don't put yourself into a situation to turn the tide, to change the way you're going to flow, the water's flowing. And if you're flowing downhill, it's great. But when you do something like that, everybody's looking at you. You're in the wrong colored jersey on the wrong sideline, and because some guy's chirping at you and you throw a football at him, it's just not. And I'm glad he apologized to the team and stuff like that. But as a fan and as a coach, and I'm not, I don't need to speak for Dan Campbell. It's getting frustrating. And then watching him argue with Randall L on the sidelines.
Oh,
And Randall Allen, and that's another. I wouldn't be arguing with that guy. And so I think these are turning points. And you know what? You better grow up, son, because you're gonna. And you can see it's frustrating on my part because I love. Hey, the hurdle. Oh my God! All I see about is the hurdle on. Let's show him. Then everybody's making the funny memes. Oh, he was just saying Happy Thanksgiving and playing catch. It's not funny. Okay. It almost cost us a game, but we won, and hopefully he learns from it again and he gets his hands back on the rope and gets to the top.
yeah, because again, a very talented individual, seems like a very good individual, but does keep making these mistakes. The arguing with Randall L. Obviously, we don't know the exchange there, but you could see that there was some discussion going back and forth. And James, you wanted to what's your weigh in on this situation?
Yeah, if my lip reading skills are correct, Randall L told him that the play was done, and then Jamo said something back to him, and Randall L said, "Not one more word," and
Ooh,
Jameson shut up.
yeah, and Campbell was asked after the game how he would address it, and Coach already alluded to this. Campbell said it's already been taken care of. He said JMO spoke to the team, and he goes, and JMO did that on his own behalf, like he asked to do that. They didn't ask JMO to go speak to the team. JMO asked if he could. It sounds like he apologized, and again, hopefully he learns from this, because you things like this against a different team, it's going to be a loss, right, James?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was a boneheaded boneheaded thing. I mean, we're kind of getting numb to these things by Jameson Williams, but I think, he needs to grow up, and if continuing to do these things is going to cost him down the road in contract money and all kinds of things. But on the other hand, I mean, he's a kid.
Yeah.
He's in his second year basically in the league, and towards the end of the game, Keenan Allen did the same stupid thing, and he is a long time veteran.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
throwing the ball at the referee, how dumb is that?
Oh man, that was something we needed at that moment too. That really helped the Lions. That slowed them down from their progression. So we already talked about the time of possession in the second half. The Lions did not do well with it. They only ran the ball for 50 yards. The Bears, they made some progressions. And so whether it was the adjustments on offense, they found some open spots. But another thing that comes up is the injuries. The Lions had multiple guys in the second half go down to injury. Levi Onwuzurike went down. Josh Paschal went down. We already had guys out. Um, Coach, I guess we can kind of, put this into the bigger context as far as injuries go. And that is right now, the Lions have a number of guys out, right? Aiden Hutchinson's out for the season, likely, right? Marcus Davenport is out. The linebackers, Alex Anzalone is out, maybe for playoffs. Derek Barnes is out, we think, for the rest of the season. Uh, Levi Onwuzurike got hurt in this game. Carlton Davis did not play in this game. Hopefully he's back next week. He's dealing with a hand and a knee injury. And those are starters. Starters all on defense, I believe. One, two, three, four, five. That's yeah. And then we got backups, right? Or reserves, like Malcolm Rodriguez, who got hurt in this game as well. I didn't mention that. Him getting hurt took that hurt the defense there in the second half. We're waiting for Jalen Reeves-Maybin to come back. Hopefully that's soon. You coach, your guy, Kaminsky, from the beginning of the season, he's out. He was a rotational guy. Paschal got hurt. Hopefully he's back. Enos Rakestraw's on IR. We've got a number of guys. Iffy is out, and we don't know when he's coming back. Emmanuel Mosley. There are so many guys that have been injured. Now, before I turn this over to you guys, we also know that coming into this season, we thought this was the deepest Lions roster we've ever seen. I think James talked about how this practice squad was like quality guys that would have been a starting or at least on our active roster 3 years ago. So, Coach, let's start with you and tell me here, we're going in, at this point we got 5 games left, most of those guys I mentioned were on the defense. So, what's happening here?
Who knows? But James was right, because we did have that great support cast down below, because they all are starters. And the guys that we have out would start as a unit at probably 80% of the teams in the NFL right now. And again, we got Long. Long played well yesterday. What's the other guy's name that played there? He has his most snaps
Turner.
in his career. What's that?
Ezekiel Turner.
Yes, thank you, Turner. He played more snaps than he's ever done in a game, and he's done a great job. We got, we just picked up another linebacker. I'm sure you're going to talk about that. So I think that the biggest thing what they do is AG's been coaching situation coach all year because of these injuries. This game we played more. I'm sure we played. I didn't look at the numbers yet. I'm sure we played more nickel than we have out of our base, probably for the first time or close to even, because of the bodies going out. The key is the back end. Our back end is tough. I don't think CD's probably going to be back. If we don't know about. Emmanuel, I feel so bad for that guy. I just want to see him get in and survive a full game. And then up front, McNeil and Reeder and Muhammad right now in this case, and O'Connor, those guys are doing what they're supposed to do. Trevor played over 20 snaps, I think, in the second half, and he's just playing that Sam linebacker spot. Hold the edge. If you got to go get the quarterback, go get the quarterback. So they're gonna continue. And you guys heard Dan Campbell's quotes. I loved it.
Yeah.
I can't complain about it. I can't moan about it. This is what's handed to me. We've all had that, as coaches, and you want to say the next guy up, but you also can scheme. We got some dogs still over there. We got guys that can play football over there. Campbell is ahead of where I thought he would be right now. Not that I didn't think he was going to be great, but I think he's playing like an all pro right now. The guy's making some plays. And so you got him and with his smarts. And then even when Trevor's in there, Trevor's one of the smartest guys I ever was associated with on the field. And then you got your back end guys. You got the two best safeties in the game. AG's going to dial up pressure. So what we have to put on that field, I feel comfortable with it. I'd love to have, if we had those other 16 guys back, I'd probably be talking that big bowl game, but I'm not going to talk that right now. So, but that's just my gut feeling on they'll get them ready. And here we go.
All right. Well, James, you've got more details on injuries, and tell me kind of how you're feeling right now about this.
After watching the Packers and what their offense did on Thursday, I'm wondering what's going to happen next Thursday with against this Lions, patchwork defense. We'll talk about more of that on the preview show next week. But the Lions have 16 players on injured reserve, and a few of those are guys from the preseason who are kind of borderline that were even going to make the team and stuff. But that doesn't even count Malcolm Rodriguez, who they haven't officially put in injured reserve yet. But that will be. I mean, because he tore his ACL, he's done for the season. So they've used, I think, 5 of their injured reserve activations. I'm not 100% on that number, but I know they've activated Broderick Martin, Mosley, Iffy. Then Iffy went right back on the injured reserve. But and you're only allowed 8 elevations or activations from injured reserve during the regular season. You get 2 more during the playoffs.
Okay.
So they could activate, Kaminsky or Anzalone, wait and activate them for the playoffs if they needed to or something like that. But or Hutchinson, I guess even. But those 8, if you don't use them too, they rolled over into the playoffs if you don't use all of those 8. So, but they're getting pretty close to being to the point where they're going to use all 8 of those activations maybe before the end of the regular season. So, I just wonder if next week we'll see some unusual defensive alignments given kind of the lack of depth at defensive end right now. Maybe move Broderick Martin into defensive tackle and put Aleem McNeil at a big end in a 3-4 look for a few plays here or there just to give him a different look. But the linebacking core has played pretty darn admirably considering how many guys are down there too, and just bringing guys in. Bringing in guys like Turner and Neiman, Long, and now Quan Alexander. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it reminds you of like the 49ers from like a year or two ago when they would sustain injuries, and it seemed like the team barely missed a beat when those other guys came in. And so that's the thing. We've seen so many guys stepping up, and we've kind of transitioned right naturally from things we didn't like to major storylines because this has got to be the big storyline right now of the Detroit Lions is how many injuries can we sustain on defense and keep moving forward, right? It's not how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Yeah, I'm quoting Rocky Balboa right now, guys, because we might be facing that team of Philadelphia later in the playoffs, but as coach would tell you, we got to get to the playoffs first, okay? And so if I'm looking at that, I got to ask you guys this. With these injuries, we have 5 games left in the regular season, right? We are 11-1. Are you worried? I mean, we won 10 games in a row. We saw last year what happened in Philadelphia, right? They were like 10-1 or something like that. Now, again, very different coaching between our building and their building. And we've got one of the best coaching staffs, one of the most consistent coaching staffs for multiple years in a row right now, which gives us an edge over multiple other teams in the NFL as well, including the NFC North. So I'm just wondering, are you still feeling good about this team, or are you starting to worry that the defense is going to struggle only due to the fact that so many guys have been injured? Coach, let's start with you.
The guys that we have in place, the people, the dogs, the all pros, I think will carry the load. I think one thing we have to think about it. And again, I mentioned, the two safeties. We got good corners. Robertson's a good nickel. Campbell's a good linebacker. Are we going to have 11 all pros on a defense? Most teams don't. Most teams have to be a role player. Most teams have to have some superstars. The Lions have the superstars. We were loaded with superstars prior to this, but we still have some. And I'm going to tell you, my biggest thing, I look at this coaching staff, and I got to keep bringing that up because with Shepard at backer coach, with Williams as the D line coach, and AG as our D coordinator. He's going to dial some stuff up, guys. They're always thinking. And I heard Campbell say we're going to have a couple days off. And then he changed it and said, well, the players are going to have a couple days off. So I know what's going on right now. They're eating cold turkey sandwiches in the office, breaking down film and finding out where the new guy they just signed is going to play. What more can we use Long with? And hopefully we get CD back and let's go. So a little bit nervous, yeah. But if our offense is on fire and we average 28 points a game, we're not going to lose because our defense is going to hold people below that, around that 20 range.
Yeah, I second a lot of those emotions there, Coach. I think the trade for Zadarius Smith is looking bigger and bigger right now because of the impact that guy can provide, especially with the mounting injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I have a lot of faith in the coaching. We are going to need those guys to show that they're worth where they were kept, right? And the fact that we said they had such a deep roster, we're already seeing the fruits of it. But the offense is going to have to carry some of that load in the second half of some football games, I think. I think that's going to be imperative. We can't have a repeat of what happened this week, the next 2 weeks from the offense, where they almost go silent in the second half. The third quarter wasn't actually horrible by the offense in this game. We gave up a touchdown, I believe, but then we came right back and got a touchdown. And so the offense did something. But in the fourth quarter, we couldn't run the ball or didn't run the ball as we thought we were going to based on the first half. James, with these injuries, the mounting defense, how are you viewing that as we're marching into these last 5 games?
Thankfully, the secondary is still in pretty good shape. I mean, overall, it looks like I think Carlton Davis will be back next week. Mosley was a late scratch this week because he apparently tweaked a hamstring during warmups. So he was supposed to play. So they ended up going with Vildor and Dorsey a lot more than they expected. Um, but So the secondary, and that's what they're going to need against the Packers. I mean, the strength of their offense is their 4 young wide receivers, and then Tucker Kraft at tight end. So they're going to have to deal with those, and the secondary, having a healthy secondary is going to help. Adding Quan Alexander gives them another experienced veteran at linebacker that they can put in there. He's a former Pro Bowl linebacker, former guy who I think signed like $100 million contract at one point. I mean, he's a veteran. I mean, he's only played in 3 games this year for the Broncos off their practice squad, but 2 of those were starts. So he's got a bunch of snaps under his belt this season. It's not like he's coming off the practice squad and hasn't played at all. He started 2 games. One of them was against the Ravens, and he put up a 92.5 PFF rating in that game. I mean, that's pretty huge against a run-heavy offense like the Ravens, but that plays into his strength too, which is playing the run. He's a lot like David Long. He's not known for his pass coverage ability, but that's another nice addition. I mean, to add him into there and David Long to this defense, I'm going to guess David Long is going to have to play a lot more this week. I just think that the NFL seriously needs to look into its scheduling process, and teams that play games on Thursday cannot have played on Sunday, the Sunday before it. If you watch all 3 of those games like I did on Thanksgiving, there was injuries everywhere. The 2 after the Lions.
Well, James, if you look throughout the season, most people say the Thursday night games are just a mess because both teams played on the Sunday before. So throughout the season, it seems like those Thursday games are very lackluster. I mean, we saw the Houston Texans look disgusting against, I forget who it was that they played, but that looked really bad. And then they come back and their extra rest and stuff against the Lions, and they played much better. But I only watched the one game, the Lions one. But yeah, I don't know how you would not play on the Sunday if you're playing that Thursday. Maybe if you're only coming off a bye week or something.
That's exactly, I think, the easy fix is that, that it seems like the NFL is going to go to a schedule at some point where they put two buys in everybody's schedule. So, that I mean, from the NFL's standpoint, that's a big moneymaker because you can spread the games out, put more in prime time, and make more money. But you can also put another bye week in there for everybody, and that way, everybody who's playing on Thursday gets a bye week before their game. Maybe you don't play Thursday games aside from the opening week when nobody's really played before that for a couple weeks into the season, and then once bye weeks start, you have your Thursday games.
Yeah, I believe it was like 1993 where the league experimented with a two bye week season where every team had two buys. I don't know if you guys remember that, but they add an extra week to the season and every team got two buys. And they only did it for 1 year. That might have been the year the Cleveland Browns didn't exist after they'd moved to Baltimore. There was an odd number of teams or something. But if they do go to 18 games in the regular season, two preseason, that might be something they also do that does allow them to spread things out more. But also, I don't know, all the other 12 to 15 to 80 other, collateral things that happen to go along with that. But I like that idea of come off a bye week to not have to play on a short week because even though you get the extra 10 days, the extra few days to have 10 days between that game and the next one, you're still making the sacrifice to earn the reward. And so therefore, I've seen that in many lines of work. You got to sacrifice something for the reward. It's not really a reward if you're sacrificing. And so, yeah, I could see that a lot. You guys, some great points on the secondary right there. Think about Detroit Lions defense last year. Okay. We didn't have as many injuries late in the season, it seemed. We had guys coming back from injury, but our secondary was much weaker. And so if those safeties we have are playing amazing and Arnold and Davis, I mean, if you just have those four guys playing the way they are, that's going to help us because it takes a little bit of pressure off those linebackers. You can throw a nickel back in there. And it sounds like the linebackers we have are more going to be the run defender as opposed to the coverage guys, as we've lost a couple of those. But the improved secondary is what still gives me hope going forward. Along with, I still don't, I mean, this is crazy to say this when we have 180 plus point differential on our team. I don't think our offense has hit its peak right now. I think we're doing some things well, but I don't think, I think we've got other areas to do things in against some really good teams. And so I've got a lot of hope yet.
Well, another thing off of that too is our red zone defense is so good.
Yes.
And you might see a little bit more of that bend don't break, even a little bit more than that, and then be able. I mean, let's just talk about the last game. Allen freaking turned Robertson, put him into a blender, but he was able to make four moves in that time because we didn't have the pressure concept on him. That's not going to happen again. That play does not happen if we get a little bit of pressure on him on that one, and you got it. So I think that's one thing that you're going to see a little more of. And, the big thing is, again, our pressures, we talked about it earlier, our pressures without blitzes this week, it was the highest we've had in a while. And that was with beat up, right? That goes
Right.
back to Williams, guys. That goes back to Williams. That goes back to their schemes up front. And that goes back to knock on wood that those Reader and McNeil stay healthy because now you're doubling McNeil. And guess what? Reader had a big day. Well, you better go back to doubling Reader. Now McNeil's going to have a big day. So, yeah, I'm not real concerned with it. Just get through the regular season and get some healthy bodies back.
For sure. And one area we haven't talked about yet is special teams. I want to talk about both kickers in this one, guys. How about that Jack Fox punt in the fourth quarter to put him at the 1 yard line? I mean, we couldn't force a 3 and out or a 4 and out, I guess, right away, but they were at the 1 yard line, not the 20 or 25. That's so important, isn't it, Coach? When a final drive's coming up and the defense has to try to make a stand.
Oh, for sure. And he's another defender for us, if you think about it. I mean, guys, we talk about it every week. How many times does he flip the field? And granted, we didn't get out of that. Okay. Well, we didn't get out of it because we were banged up front. Okay. And so we didn't get out of it. We didn't do our job defensively in that situation. Caleb made some good plays. They made some good plays. But that's 99 yards is a long way to go. I don't care if you're in the NFL or in Pop Warner. We're going to win a higher percentage of those if that continues to happen. That's why I think he's the best.
All right, James, anything you want to add on him? And then the other thing I want to ask you about is Jake Bates. He missed his first NFL field goal in this game. I think it was 45 yards. What are your thoughts on that? And again, if you want to talk about Fox and punting, feel free to do that as well.
I think it's been such a good start to the season that I don't think that's going to be a big deal for Bates. If that had happened early, maybe that could be like a kind of a mental block with him or something. But he's had so much success already this season. I think that that'll just be water under the bridge. At least we hope so. Yeah, the secondary played well. The intro. I don't know, Jerry. Did you see the one Hail Mary type of defense that they played where they only had one down lineman?
Oh, yeah, I loved it.
And
And they
then
protected the sidelines.
and three guys stacked up on the sideline so they couldn't get out of
Yeah.
bounds.
Yeah.
How much? I mean, you're talking about end of game coaching. How great was it to see something like that? Just thinking that out. Like we're not going to let them get out of bounds, and stop the clock and still have a field or still have a timeout in their pocket.
Yeah,
Then
the
they
only
came
way
back with
that go ahead, coach.
yeah, then they came back with pressure on the next one with 3 man.
Which is
Just
great to
good.
mix it up.
Yes, yes.
And I mean, I agree. I don't think the field goal miss is going to be a big deal because they said there's going to no one's perfect, and he's done so well to begin with. But I want to throw this out to you, Coach. If he makes that field goal, it's a 6-point tight score differential, and the Bears, they got across midfield with a good chunk of time left.
Right.
Do you think? And again, I mean, we don't know what the coaching staff was thinking based on what happened. And then we saw what happened again, which is they don't have a coach and whatnot. They got a promotion from within. But do you think there's a chance? And again, I mean, I don't want to give too much credit over there on this point, but do you think they have a different philosophy of attacking the field and not wasting all that time if they need a touchdown versus, oh, all we need to do is get into field goal range? It was like they were in field goal range, then out of it, then back into it, and like on the edge of it. Like with all those penalties, it was like a zigzag or going back and forth. So I don't know. Do you think that might have changed their attack?
Well, I could have, but the other thing too is you got a short field when you miss a field goal, but you got to go 80 yards if you make the field goal. So now
Yeah.
your percentage is different. So now they got to move the ball a little bit farther. AG is going to dial up, and then what that comes into for me, and what the Lions were thinking in that situation. We just mentioned it. We have the best red zone defense in NFL, I believe. Should still have it, even with giving up what we did this. And so that's one of the things. All right, let them drive down. They're going to let us. And we just talked about they're going to keep you in bounds. We're going to keep you in. They're going to be burning time. I don't care if you got 3 timeouts or no timeouts left. You're gonna have to use the middle of the field, and the Lions are gonna rally around that with those safeties we got. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's here or there. I mean, you go back to if we score a touchdown in the first half, if we don't fumble, if JMO
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
have 15, that game's over with. And so the game ended up the way it should have been because the better team won, and the team that deserves to get a break won. And so yeah, I don't, whatever. But again, that's what you got to look at. The percentages of scoring from the 40-yard, 60-yard compared to the percentages of scoring from 80 yards is it's huge. I don't know what it is in NFL, but at high school it's gigantic. So yeah, they may have called it different. Maybe they would have used a timeout. Maybe they would have got a call in. Maybe the crowd would have been louder and they couldn't get a call in. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, the end of that. I mean, Coach James, I'm gonna ask each of you. Did that make it couldn't have made any sense to any of you? I didn't even hear Eberflus's remarks, but I heard his remarks were baffling because he basically wasn't willing to admit he did anything wrong, James. Or I mean, it made no sense that I'm watching the game. I'm like watching Dysfunction Junction, James.
Yeah, after the game, he doubled down and said he thought that they did everything right and that it was a good call. And I'm like, how? How? You had a timeout in your pocket and you had the time to do this, and you just let time run out. I
That's
don't
worse than that Cowboys playoff game where they had no time left on the clock and tried to spike the ball or something, and they knew they couldn't catch it in bounds.
It's crazy. I don't. It was funny because I'm looking at how our defense is lined up. I'm watching, it might have been Long running out to cover the running back on the wide receiver. I'm analyzing all that. And Duke's like, the clock's going to run out. What are you talking about? The clock. Duke's like, they're not calling a timeout. So then he was on that and we were going back. I'm like, what? Oh my God. And then I finally looked down at the clock. Well, I looked at the play clock and then I looked down at their clock and I saw it at 6, 7 seconds. And I'm like, this game's over with unless they get a Hail Mary against us, which ain't
Or,
happening.
or I was petrified they were going to somehow get a pass interference call against the
Yeah,
defense
yeah,
and put him at the 5 yard line with one untimed down. That was my nightmare scenario. Of course, it didn't happen. It wasn't the case. But you're right, coach. I'm sitting here. I'm like, you're just in disbelief as to what you're watching. You're like, wait a minute. This is the NFL. How are these things happening?
yeah.
Well, guys, let's update the standings. 3 out of the 4 NFC North teams played on Thanksgiving. There are 5 games left. Obviously, 2 of the teams were the Lions and the Bears. The Packers played as well. They won. The Detroit Lions are 11-1. The Minnesota Vikings are 9-2. They have a game on Sunday pending. The Packers are 9-3 now, and the Bears, they're 4-8. The crazy thing is, every team in the NFC North still has a positive point differential. The Bears have lost 6 straight games. They have a positive point differential by one. It's only one, but at 4-8, that's kind of a crazy thing. Uh, so, James, let's start with you. What are you thinking about the division right now? How you're feeling about that?
Well, I mean, it's nice to have sort of a two-game cushion. 2 games on the Packers, one with, they have to play another game. They're basically a game behind us now, so it's almost like you have two in hand. But the injuries keep mounting up, and you never know about that. I think that the game next Thursday against the Packers could be a track meet. I mean, their offense is really good. Interestingly, Detroit's offense has been pretty much spared in the massive amount of injuries that they have, aside from a couple of games to some guys here and there and Jameson Williams suspension. So, I mean, I could see this game being incredibly high scoring. It'd be interesting to see what Vegas sets the over under on points in this game. Uh, but then I think the Bears are pretty well done. I think they fired Eberflus. That's the first time the Bears have ever fired a coach in the middle of the season in their history.
That
Um,
says something.
yeah, and I think him refusing to own up to a mistake and doubling down on the end of that game probably didn't help him either. But I also think the Bears kind of oddly promoted the offensive coordinator who's done a good job. So like let him continue to do a good job rather than now make Caleb Williams have a third offensive coordinator in a year, essentially. So that was an interesting promotion. I would have thought like they would have done something kind of like what the Dolphins did when they made Dan Campbell an interim coach. You don't take one of your coordinators out of the coaching room sort of by making him the head coach. You take a position coach who's got good leadership skills. I thought that's what they would have done, but
Yeah.
their interim coach is the offensive coordinator.
Well, and sometimes teams do get a little midseason bump from a move like that, and some things change.
Mhm.
There were a lot of people that I know who follow the Bears who were surprised that the Bears kept Eberflus around at the end of last season because they're bringing in new quarterback likely because they knew they're going to draft Caleb Williams, and it's like, all right, are you going to start all over, or you think Eberflus is the guy? I mean, it seemed like Eberflus was probably more the defensive minded guy who did well with the defense. But I just want to throw something out here, James, and then Coach, I'm going to let you weigh on this as well, even though you might not want to. Um, and that is, if the Bears let Eberflus go last year, I know the name people are going to jump to is Ben Johnson, but do you think Jim Harbaugh might have considered that job, James?
I would think so with the offensive weapons that they have. And what he's been able to do with the Chargers and turn their defense around. I think that would have been a pretty attractive job for Harbaugh, and maybe even I don't know that Ben Johnson. I think his loyalty to Dan Campbell would be that he would never take a job in the division.
I like that.
But I think Harbaugh for sure.
I mean, Harbaugh played with the Bears coach. I'm glad Harbaugh's
Mhm.
not in our division. I'm going to put that out there right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Interestingly, at the Colts game the last week, Harbaugh is on their Ring of Honor.
yeah.
He only played there for like 3 seasons.
Coach, what do you got on Harbaugh?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think he would have probably taken it. I mean, he was there. You know, it was one of the things he probably looked at. I know he jumped on the Chargers one because he had made. I heard the comment a few years back about Ryan Day being born on third base when he walked in and took that Ohio State game, and Harbaugh was born on third base when he went into the Chargers. They were loaded, and they got freaking two of the best pass rushers. They got a really good quarterback. So, but he may have wanted to be the one that turned that thing around. I'll give you a pretty neat thing I read today with the Browns or with the Bears. Um, 3 and 3, I think it's 3 out of the last 10 years or that something like that they've drafted a quarterback in the first round. They fired the coach.
I saw that. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess if you're a coach and you're going to draft, if I'm a Bears from now, if I was the Bears head coach, I'd never draft a quarterback because I'm going to get fired. So, anyways, so it'll
So
be
it
interesting.
seems.
But going back to the Bears, they're going to be spoilers, guys. That's
Yes,
a
they
good
are.
football team, and
Yep.
they're going to be after us when we play them again. Caleb's complaining about the tackle he took from Jack, which
Yep.
slide or run out of bounds, then, dude.
Yeah.
This is the
Nothing wrong
NFL.
with that.
Oh my
Mhm.
God. And so he's going to be, but they're going to want to upset some other. Plus, if they like this new OC and they think he's going to be their next leader, they're going to play their tails off for him. So you guys got to think about that too. That's one of the things that I look at and going, well, if this is the guy, and Caleb likes him, and if Caleb likes him, he's going to be in because you're not going to get rid of the number one draft pick. You're going to get rid of a coach before you get rid of the number one draft pick.
Yeah, and they play everybody in the division once more. And
Yep.
exactly, I mean, again, they have a +1 point differential
Mm-hmm.
with 6 losses in a row. They are a talented football team. They've got some holes like every team does, but they arguably should have won two or three of the games they lost in that 6 game streak.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got to go back to what coach always says, which is 1 week at a time, 1 game at a time. We want the playoffs. And, technically speaking, the Lions could qualify for the playoffs before they take another snap. And that would be if they win, which they did. But one scenario is San Francisco would have to lose, Arizona, Seattle, and Tampa would have to lose. The other one is San Francisco, Arizona, Seattle, along with Washington and Atlanta. But as coach pointed out in our text message thread, we don't want Arizona to lose because they're playing the Vikings. And we would like one more game cushion in between first and second place in the division. And so let's just win a couple more games over the next couple of weeks. And then we can look at playoffs because we got some real tough games coming up. This is not going to be an easy end of the season for the Lions. I mean, we know a week from now or next Thursday, the Lions are playing the Packers at home, and then we get the Bills at home. Those two are huge before road games to said Bears and the 49ers, who are going to be fighting for their playoff lives at that point before that final home game against the Vikings. So, yeah, a lot to look at with the division. We will maybe look at the playoff picture in our next episode when we do a preview. But right now, the top of the NFC North, it's just as tight. Even though we won, the Packers won, and the Vikings, they're right there as well. If they win, they'll be right on our heels. Um, so let's wrap it up with some final thoughts here. James, what do you got? Any final thoughts?
With the win on Thursday, I mean, it's Dan Campbell's first win on Thanksgiving, first of all.
Bravo.
That broke a little streak. It also eliminated the Lions from contention for the number one pick. If they lost out, they could not get the number one pick.
Okay, well, I'm glad we've gotten that rid of that one. That's a great fact there, James. I'm gonna throw in a final thought of that hurdle by JMO was pretty sweet. It really was. And I'm gonna say I think if he lands the hurdle cleanly, I think he's gonna pick up another 10 or 15 or be gone. But that was impressive. I know it didn't, I mean, I don't know. It was awesome. And that guy is not gonna love being on that highlight. I don't know who it was from the Bears, but it was pretty incredible. Coach, how about you?
Yeah, final thoughts is just, we'll go back to about the play, talking about the playoffs, talking about that stuff. And again, I talked about we just got to win our home field. And the thing is, we beat the Packers on the road and we beat the Vikings on the road. So if we win home field, we're going to beat both those guys again, and we're in great shape. And this week, of course, is the big one, and it's gonna give you a little bit. The tiebreakers start to fall into place, then, guys. And what's our north, our north, our of course head to head in the league, but it also falls into place on the division. So or on the league. So I think that's the biggest thing we got to do. And let's rally and see us do something great again next Thursday against the Packers.
Yeah, that is going to be a big game. And like you guys, we've talked about before, them getting those wins on the road early was huge against Minnesota and Green Bay. Coming in this week is going to be big. Coach, you're going to be at that game. We are expecting you to be part of the problem, okay? For the Green Bay Packers. Oh, and I said the problem. I got to bring this up. We didn't talk about this, guys. The Lions let James Houston go.
Yeah.
He's gone. I mean, and so they figured out one reason or another it wasn't working anymore, and so maybe it was the injury from last year. It just he wasn't the same player, or they needed to go in a different direction for another reason. Cleveland Browns claimed him off waivers, so he and Zadarius Smith kind of swapped teams there. But wish James Houston well. Now it's next guy up for the Lions. All right, so I guess we did final thoughts, but one more thing. How was your Thanksgiving? James, we'll start with you.
Well, Thanksgiving is always interesting because the Lions are always on TV, and a lot of my family are actually Packers fans because me and my sister both married people from Wisconsin.
Oh,
So, so a lot of it's interesting watching a Lions game with Packers fans surrounding you, to say the least.
all right. Well, yeah, at least you weren't playing the Packers this year, so that helped.
For sure.
Coach, how about you?
Well, mine is I've had it with watching the Lions. Not had it with love watching the Lions on Thanksgiving. I refuse to watch it with a bunch of people anymore because it's does like James was just saying. I would lose my mind. So I went downstairs in the basement, and my son was with me because he's the same type I am. And my nephew came in. I told him he could come in if he got here at no later than 12:30 because I don't want him walking in at kickoff. My brother-in-law tried to put a plate in front of a snack plate, which he would have put his head in front of the TV. And at that point, I said, "Do not get in front of the TV." And everybody else stayed upstairs. And they got really nervous because my friend from Colorado just moved in, him and his wife. They were actually going to leave if the Lions lost because Kathy said, "This is not going to be a good day for my husband." So, but it turned out great. And I ate so much food and I still feel full, but I'm full of Lions victory. So that's my Thanksgiving from now on, guys. I just can't do it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad for the sake of the rest of your family, the
Yes.
Lions won that game. Um, we as you guys know, we're vacationing in London right now, and my wife found a restaurant that offered traditional Thanksgiving meals, and so we went there and we ate Thanksgiving dinner at 1:30 in the afternoon, or maybe it's even 1 o'clock, which would have made it about 6 a.m. East Coast time. But it was a great meal. And then, the 12:30 kickoff for the Lions was a 5:30 kickoff over here. And we went to a sports bar and restaurant called Northwood. And it was great. I mean, I didn't think of this fully through, but it was like, well, where are you going to find the NFL games? Well, considering it was Thanksgiving, there's only one NFL game on at that point. So I didn't have to find like the red zone package or something like that. Like when I found the Lions the week before, there was one game. Um, but they had a box waiting for us, and it was like a gift, and because you have to reserve a table, and like, sometimes they explained to us that sometimes the NFL sends them merchandise and stuff as just a way to give to some of their fans. And so we opened the box. I was like, that's really cool. And we opened the box up, and it was a Devontae Smith a Philadelphia Eagles jersey. And so very nice jersey and everything. Obviously not an Eagles fan here. And I don't know if that's foreshadowing that the Lions and Eagles could play this year, or maybe we're just trying to draw connections. But met some other football fans, met a Seahawks fan, another Lions fan, and ultimately decided to give the jersey to one of them. There's another Lions fan there. I was like, you know what? Here I am over in Europe. It's easier for us to get jerseys in the States than it is in Europe. And I'm not going to, wear an Eagles jersey. So I passed it on to them. It was a lot of fun watching the game. We got to hear the sound, James. It's always nice when an establishment plays the sound when you're watching a game, because I was able to pick up a lot of the game and what was going on. So it worked out well. It was 9 o'clock at night, I think, when that game ended, or maybe about that time. And it was funny because they had the time schedules for the next two, and the late game was going to start at 1 a.m. here. So I can't even imagine what life is like if your team's playing at 1 a.m. All right. Well, hey guys, thank you for your flexibility on the scheduling. Glad you had safe travels to Indianapolis and back, James. Coach, we'll be talking to you before you head to the Lions Packers game when we do our preview show next week. To all the listeners out there, folks, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. If you get into the Black Friday shopping, hope you found some good deals out there. Thank you for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like and subscribe, regardless of your listening platform. Comment on socials if you can. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.